Jobs most at risk. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I thought we'd have a look at this article about the PM calling for reduced hours and pay extensions, and what jobs are going to be most at risk when JobKeeper comes to an end, if it comes to an end. So the Prime Minister has outlined the jobs most at risk of being lost if changes aren't made ahead of the end of JobKeeper in September. I mean, this is the issue we have. We've got huge amount of interventions in the whole economy. We've got the whole economy essentially shut down and locked down by the state. We've got businesses which will not bounce back. That's the harsh reality, everyone. Australia's entering a recession, a bloody deep recession. And I know some people are saying we're heading for depression, but technically there's no actual definition of a depression. It's not just a worse recession. It's prolonged period. Or one argument is that it's prolonged period of below trend growth. Based on that, you could say on a per capita basis, our economy has been depressed since the GFC, everyone. Our growth has been below trend since then. Just think about that. Does that explain a lot? Does that explain the challenges or the different, the complete lack of wage growth in our nation? So Prime Minister Scott Morrison has called for bosses to be able to extend flexible arrangements to allow full-time workers to work for reduced hours and reduced pay to protect jobs. And that seems perfectly reasonable. When you have, you want to keep your workers, generally. If you've trained in them, you've invested in them, if you like them, and I'm thinking from a small business perspective here, where you actually have a relationship with your staff, you want to help them keep their job. You kind of got a vested interest. It probably disappears in bigger organizations where you've got HR departments and it's just so inhuman. But, I feel sorry for people who have to work in that, to be honest. I don't think I could handle it. Too PC for me. As the Morrison government prepares to announce the fate of the JobKeeper payment next month, the Prime Minister said workplace flexibility was shaping up as important as the wage subsidy. Under the JobKeeper laws, employers were given temporary power, only temporary, to reduce hours of work where employees work. So just think about that. These things, which are probably very sensible, it's only temporary. You're only temporarily allowed. A lot of people don't realize just the burden that the state puts on you and all the legislation puts on you once you employ people. It is, in many ways, a disincentive to take on that burden. And I know why people offshore work, for that very reason. The Prime Minister suggested that even if the JobKeeper payments are phased out from September, that flexibility could remain. This is the constant feedback we have as well, he said. It's important in talking about ongoing fiscal support, we also talk about ongoing industrial relations flexibility. Industrial relations inflexibility in this environment will cost jobs and will cut jobs too. Yes, 100%, he's right there. It leads to unemployment. It leads to it disincentivizes businesses from taking on people. One argument I've made for some time, which seems very counterintuitive, is that to increase employment, you need to make it easier to fire people. Because that's the thing. Once you take someone on, you need to jump through all these hoops. You need to give them one warning, another warning. You need to train them. You need to hold their hand. Which sounds all good and nice and fair, but if someone's useless, often you'll make them redundant, or people will make them redundant and pay them out. They won't even know they're useless. A lot of it has to do with attitude. You can't tell until you actually work with someone if their attitude is the right fit. That's why, if you can fire people easier, you'll be more inclined to hire them. A lot of people would then just, okay, we need that support, rather than pushing everyone that we like to work extra, we'll take someone else on. Because it's a big risk. If we were to go into a situation where the industrial relations flexibility was withdrawn post-September, what that would mean is that the rigid rules around full-time and part-time employment, which employers are managing to keep people in jobs and share hours and doing things like that, if those rigid rules were reinforced, and they're talking to the National Cabinet on those part-time hours, would be most at risk. So what he's saying is if we went back to the old way, the people who are simply keeping their job at reduced hours would be in trouble. And you need to give people notice, you need to give them redundancy if you want to change their role to part-time. So it's often easier just to fire them. Go, nope, we can't keep that job, it's made redundant. This is the thing, the government really intervenes in business more than people realize. And a lot of that's to blame for the unions. You know, now they're pushing as well. You saw what happened in America with the minimum wage laws and the requirements around gig workers. And that's costing people jobs. It's costing people opportunities. I find it quite ironic that all the lefty media there, all their reporters are losing jobs. All their, writers who are working from home. They're advocating for these interventions in the market, and now they can't get work because they're breaching their own rules. So, here we go. You can see the increase in unemployment. And I'm bringing up building as well. Unemployment has shot up, everyone. But also, job ads have crashed. They have crashed. What does that do? This is foreshadowing the unemployment rate. That's because in order to fulfill the requirements of the full-time hours at the full-time rates, then I fear that they could lead to part-time employment being lost unnecessarily. And we know that particularly women are affected. How is this written? Essentially, women are going to be most affected, guys. They're going to be most affected. Which is just the nature of the work that they have. And fundamentally, this comes down to inflexibility in our employment system and industrial relations. There needs to be changes and there needs to be reform. It needs to be easier. This is the thing. Everyone's calling for manufacturing this, Australia this. We've got a tiny population and our industrial relations is much more complicated than it needs to be. And you've got people that, that probably don't want to give up. You've got a generation that don't want to give up their full time. They want to have this perk and have that. And when there's a younger generation that, just want to have a job. Just want to have a job. I think in some ways this is going to be humbling for us as a nation. We've had it too good for a very long time. We need to make some tough calls. And I think that needs to happen on all parts of our nation. A Treasury review is examining options to move to a monthly turnover test for JobKeeper. But the Prime Minister appears to rule out any changes applying to the existing scheme that expires on September 27th. So, here's the JobKeeper. It's cost us $130 billion over 6 months, 6 million workers to benefit. That didn't happen. It was less than that. And, $1,500 per fortnight. It seems like a very rushed, ill-conceived scheme just to address the hit to the economy that the government lockdown forced on us all. While I said consistently the scheme will run as it was intended to until the end of September, there are no changes to that, he said. That would be a change to the scheme. The point about geography and putting it in for 6 months when other countries only put it in for 3 months was to give a stability and platform for employers and employees and employers alike, so they could cooperate and operate with confidence about what the next set of arrangements was. I have no doubt that there are many businesses now, fortunately, who have moved above that threshold. We'll have to see. Our hope is that more and more parts of the economy won't need them, and they will be able to move forward, he said. But here's the thing. If the government is handing out money to your competitors, they receive it and you don't, or you choose not to take it, they receive a competitive advantage as opposed to you. So people are incentivized to take it. This unemployment rate is out of date, guys. 6.2%, 7.2%. If you look at the unemployment numbers unemployment and underemployment for Roy Morgan, it's 25% of the workforce. Essentially a quarter, just under. Just under. So here we have it. It comes back to industrial relations. What do you think? Do you think there will actually be some changes in industrial relations? Or will the unions, will Labour, will business, will Liberal, will they all come together and work to reach some agreements to give greater flexibility? Or do you think it's going to be more of the same, more talking, more posturing, more politicizing? As always, please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay, or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays. You can use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.